In a land far, far away, behind a pair of microphones, two generic guys said that most novel of phrases. We should start a podcast. And after months of postponing and rescheduling, they're finally ready to make it everyone's problem. The Dork Place presents Shit I Love with People I Like. New episode every Wednesday. Good evening and welcome back, everyone, to the Dork Place. Why are you invisible, Chase? Hang on here, because my co-host is invisible for some reason, and I don't know what I did. He was there earlier. Let's find out what's going on here. Can we hear you, Chase? There you are.
There we go.
Woo! Sorry. Welcome back to the Dork Place. Welcome back to another episode of Shit I Love with People I Like. I'm your host, the Dork Knight, and with me is your co-host, Chase.
How you doing?
You know, I can't complain. How are you doing?
I'm good. We had this really solid outline to talk about exclusively like scary games we love, even though it's not Halloween. And then the universe decided to drop some bombs on us. Not literally, but like news bombs, which is crazy. Like, we got a lot to talk about, and that's exciting.
Absolutely, I totally agree. Like, it has been a day, apparently. Like, I started streaming earlier this afternoon and was hit with the news of, oh my god, did you see? And I hadn't. So I took a quick break and caught up on the news of the week. And hopefully we'll still have time to also maybe talk about horror stuff, but I guess we'll kind of see where we end up, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to try something new starting this week, and I wanted to start with a little icebreaker question.
Okay.
And I thought I would ask you, since I'm decked out, I'm going to answer too, since I'm decked out with my Sonic the Hedgehog gear, what was the first video game you remember playing?
Test Drive from 1989.
Oh my.
Distinctly remember playing that. We played it on a VGA output computer, like an old IBM. So like we didn't have the full colors. We had the like CMYK style, if you remember that, where it was like pink and blue and yeah. So that's how I played Test Drive, and you got to drive around Ferraris and stuff like that. That was my first like core memory of playing a video game was that game on like our IBM.
You know, now that you mention it, I think that my answer's a little different, because the first video game I remember owning and playing was Sonic the Hedgehog 2 with my Sega Genesis. But now that you mention it, I'm like, honestly, my first video game was probably Oregon Trail. Like the Oregon Trail on the computer. I mean, that counts, you know?
Yeah, that is a video game.
Like, I didn't think of that until you said Test Drive, and then I went, oh shit. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, we were playing games before that.
I had this like vector art IBM like Sesame Street Grover adventure game where like Grover would go on these you would like go to these different like one screen locations and you have to find things, and I remember that. But I feel like my first console that we had was a Sega Genesis. So like Sonic 2, played a lot of that, played a lot of like Double Dragon. I don't know if you remember the Dracula game that was like the Castlevania clone.
Yes.
The not good Castlevania clone. But where I grew up, it was really interesting because my cousin he was about 16 years older than I am, and he lived about 8 doors down, and I had another neighbor back 3 doors down. So my neighbor had an NES, and my cousin had an Atari 2600, and then got a Super Nintendo. So we would go back and forth between each other's houses, and like I would play like Duck Hunt and then like Turtles in Time. Was it Turtles in Time, the NES one? I can't remember. Like an old NES Ninja Turtles game, Excite Bike. And then I remember it was a big deal when my cousin got his Super Nintendo because that's like Super Mario World, Super Metroid, Super Street Fighter. Like that was a big moment. It was like playing that new generation of wow, that looks so good.
No, absolutely. Um, sorry, I'm over here. I'm mocking my our I'm mocking the people in our chat who are our age. Just acknowledging that we are all indeed ancient.
Yes. Like I have done podcasts and like one of my co-hosts on another podcast, like their first console was like PlayStation 3. And they're in their 20s. And I'm like, that's what like the first console I bought because I had a job and like living with my parents. I was like, part-time working in a warehouse. I bought a Sega Dreamcast. Like that was like I saved up $200 to get a Sega Dreamcast. And that was my most proudest moment of like, this is mine. I didn't get this as a Christmas gift. I didn't get this like as like, you know, like, mowing lawns and stuff like that. And my parents went out and bought something for me. It was like, no, I bought my Sega Dreamcast. And I still have it.
So do you have a special connection to any video games when you were a kid? Like that you
Um,
still like seek out, like I still find myself every now and then finding like specifically like the new Sonic games that come out and being like, all right, I gotta play this, just for me, for the little kid in me who still deserves to feel some sort of joy.
yes, the id Software games, so like Doom, Wolfenstein, Quake, like we grew up with Wolfenstein. Like my sister and I would take turns on the like family computer and like the little living room we had it set up in, and we would play Wolfenstein. And then I remember when Doom came out, and that was like crazy because of how the visuals were upgraded. And then when Quake happened, like I remember like begging my dad, like, we need a new computer. You don't understand how important Quake is. Uh but yeah, I think the id Software shooters are like I played Rage, I've played all the new ones like Wolfenstein 2009 before like the New Order and New Colossus came out. Um and then probably Resident Evil is the game that like my first Resident Evil was like RE2 on the PlayStation. And like a friend of mine brought his PlayStation over one day and like we played Resident Evil 2, and I was blown away that like this is the craziest, like because it was all those static backgrounds that looked like photorealistic, and then you had that ugly little polygon character running around.
Man,
Uh,
if only we were just going straight to talking about horror, that would have been a
right.
masterful segue.
Right, but there's so much more to talk about. But no, I do think, like, because I was a Sega kid, and Sega doesn't do much anymore. They make a shitty Sonic game every 5 years. You know what? Generations was really good. I will stand by that. Sonic Generations and Sonic Racing, All-Stars Racing Transformed, also really good game. I have not played Frontiers.
It's
I
not
hear it's good.
bad. It's
I hear
not
it's
bad.
good.
It's fun.
Yeah.
Like it's fine. Normalize games being fine. You know what I
Yes,
mean?
I
Like
agree. I
I was
agree.
talking about that with somebody in my comment section about my review of Atom Fall after like 4 or 5 hours, and I was like, yeah, the game's fine. I was like, it's good. It's not like game breaking. This is not gonna win game of the year, but that's okay. Not every game
No,
has to.
it's fine.
Shout out to Darth Chaco real quick in the TikTok chat. He's
Hi,
excited we're
Chaco.
talking about Sega.
Sega will always hold a very special place in my heart because number one, it's the first console I had. Number two, it's the first console I purchased with my own money. So like I will always love Sega. Um, I I still have my Dreamcast. I still have my Genesis. They both still work. And it's just one of those things that like while the Sega IPs didn't really have a lot of lasting power, like I like Nintendo. Like I've never been a huge Legend of Zelda person, but like Breath of the Wild was one of my favorite games of all time. I'm not crazy on the Mario games, but Super Mario Odyssey was super fun. I really like that game. But like I don't have the connection that a lot of people have. Like Super Metroid, incredible game. Love that game. Play it like to this day. I will like go back and like replay it every once in a while. But like I'm not like I still need to play Metroid Dread. I have not picked it up. I hear it's great.
Facts to Chaco, Nintendo is the worst when it comes to their IP. It's almost like they hate their players, he says. And I mean, I kind of get that because, like, I don't think Nintendo kind of feels like, you know how Sony keeps putting out Spider-Man villain movies so that they can keep the rights to stuff so they don't go back. Sometimes it feels like that's what Nintendo's doing with their own IP, where you're like, we're just putting out another Sonic or another, now that they put out a lot of those too, you know, they're putting out a new Mario game just to make sure that he stays in the collective conscience rather than like, and that's not always true. Like we had what, Odyssey last year before, something like that.
It was a couple of years ago.
I think it was 2 years ago.
Odyssey.
But like Pokemon, they just keep releasing new Pokemon games, and it feels a lot like they're just trying to maintain the relevance of the IP that they have rather than like growing it. I mean, the Legend of Zelda lore, I feel like we've played Ocarina of Time 47 times. Like they all feel like variations of the same thing.
So I'm I'm not a huge Zelda person, but like I think I have a slightly different take towards Nintendo because I think you're right with Pokemon. I think that's not the case with everything else. I think that with Mario, like yes, they will release a like 2D Mario every couple years where it's just like, yep, this is another one. It's just a couple more levels for you to play around with, and like we introduced this little mechanic to just have fun with, but it's like it's just 2D Mario. But when they do a like flagship 3D Mario, like Mario Odyssey, Super Mario, uh Super Mario 3D World, I think was the Wii U one. Like
I
those were
think, yeah.
like stellar games. Like they were really, really special. And I wasn't crazy about the Mario Galaxy series, but like I understand why like a lot of people really like adored those games because I do think that when they make a like I'm just gonna say a flagship title, it's a big deal. Like Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, both phenomenal games. Like industry shaping games. I do think that like we wouldn't have something like Astrobot if Nintendo wasn't continuing stuff like Mario Odyssey, even stuff like Donkey Kong's Tropical Freeze, Tropical Thunder, or something like that. No, not Tropical Thunder, Tropical Freeze. Like was a really good success. Yeah,
Donkey
wildly
Kong
different thing.
Tropic Thunder sounds
Wildly
amazing.
different.
I'm
Wildly
just
different.
imagining Diddy Kong, like they're not
What do
letting,
you
or they're not talking about you
mean, you
people. Yeah, Donkey Kong's like, what do you mean, you people?
No, like Tropical Freeze was uh, a very worthwhile successor to like Donkey Kong Country, and you had a bunch of like the Kirby games that came out on the Switch that were really good. You had like Luigi's Mansion 3 was incredible. Like I think when and this is the thing that I think Nintendo gets a lot of shit a lot of times because like they are like one of the greedier companies out there. Like they don't like people emulating their stuff. They don't like people pirating their stuff. They're very protective over their IPs. But the reality is, even when Nintendo releases like a Pokemon game that wasn't as good as the last one, it's still like one of the better JRPGs you'll get that year. Like when when you get a Tears of the Kingdom, like you will get like Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom clones for years and years. Like Genshin Impact is a Breath of the Wild clone. Like open world games that have come out like throughout the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 era have very much taken after Breath of the Wild. And I think a lot of the 3D platformers that we've gotten have been taking after Super Mario Odyssey. When I can't think of a time that Nintendo, like in recent memory, that Nintendo released a truly bad game. Like say what you will about their business practices, they make some of the best games in the industry, and there's a reason they keep their stuff exclusive, is because they have a they have a standard that they uphold that I think not a lot of people will go for. I mean, even if you look at like the Mario versus Rabbids stuff, like those were like very successful games. Like it was like the wildest team up, but like did really well. One of the best selling games of all time is Mario Kart 8. Like
Mhm.
like
You're right. There's a formula and it works. You know what I mean? That's the other thing, is that you can't fault Nintendo completely for being like, oh, we put out the same Pokemon game every time. Well, it makes fucking money. It prints.
yeah,
Like, so I mean, and I think you're right. I am being a little reductive of Nintendo right now. Like, I think it's mostly just from that sense of like I said, they maybe what it also comes down to is I don't have the connection to platformers, and
sure.
Nintendo is a huge platformer company. Like that's what they
Yeah.
built themselves on. And so like for me, a lot of times I look at like, oh, the next Mario's coming out, it's just another 3D platformer. And like,
Sure.
so I think maybe that's where part of my not contempt, but that's the word I'm going to use, comes from, is just that realizing that like for me, they're essentially the same game over and over again. But I think that comes from like just that not being my kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just one of those things, like, I don't think it's even just, like, video games. I think it's music and other things. Like, you can take any franchise and say, "Oh, it's the same thing." Like, you look at Call of Duty, right? Like, "Oh, it's been the same game for the past 20 years." And I'm like, "Yes, but no." Uh, like, if you look at, like, Black Ops 6 compared to Call of Duty 1, compared to Call of Duty Modern Warfare, compared to Modern Warfare 2, compared to the first Black Ops, wildly different games. Like, yes, you are shooting guns. Yes, that is what has stayed the same. But like they've changed a lot in a lot of these games. And it's just one of those things. Like unless you're like playing these games on a regular basis, you're not going to notice these differences. Because it's like they have a formula that works and they improve on that formula. And like Mario Odyssey, I think is a great example of like, sure, on a surface level, is Mario Odyssey and Super Mario 64 the same game? Sure, but Mario Odyssey is a vastly superior, 3D platformer compared to Mario 64.
Right. And that I totally understand. And I will admit, talking about Nintendo, I have not owned a Nintendo system since the GameCube.
Okay.
I might have owned a Wii for a very short period of time. I don't
I feel like
remember.
everyone in America at one point owned a Wii.
But so like to be fair, I'm also out of the loop when it comes to what Nintendo has been doing. I have watched some of Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild and some of those other things, and I keep my finger on the pulse a little bit, but I have not had any of them in my hands besides like occasionally playing Smash Bros or something at
Sure.
someone else's house.
Yeah. I mean, that's another one. As much as I don't like Smash Brothers, it's just one of those things of like so many people have tried to make their own Smash Brothers. Like you had like PlayStation All Stars, you had Multiverses, couldn't compete. It's like it's very hard, if not impossible, to compete with Nintendo in their own space.
Yeah, well, and Chaco brought up Pal World, which
Yeah,
is competing with and directly influencing the way that Pokemon is being developed.
sure.
Like I will say that I didn't love, and this is going to just Nintendo's, like you said, their fierce defensiveness of their IP, the way that they went after Pal World and now like and are trying to patent the art of throwing a ball at an object,
Mhm.
like in order to capture it. It's so weird. Like it feels weird because Pal World, if you have played it, if you have not played it, or if you have, it's more
Pokemon with
survival
guns.
game. But that's the thing. It's not Pokemon with guns. It's like a weird survival game where you have to like make a you have to build your own base, and you put your Pokemon to work, and like you can eat Pokemon that you catch because you gotta eat. Like, and it's one of those where it innovated. Funnily enough, when I talk about feeling like Nintendo is just regurgitating the same things over and over again, Pal World was evidence that there was more you could do with the Pokemon style universe than Nintendo was doing.
Yeah. Here's so and I don't want this to sound like I'm trying to be like a Nintendo fan, but like we were talking about, I grew up on Sega. You know, I was not a Nintendo kid.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to these like very large corporations, I think people often forget how big of a corporation Nintendo is. Like Pokemon, Mario, Zelda, Smash Brothers, like are some of the best-selling franchises in the world. Pokemon being like, I believe, the best-selling franchise in the world. Maybe next to like Hello Kitty, I think is like the one that tops it out. When I look at stuff like that, when they're like, hey, we have to do something, because I know that the developers of Pal World were starting to inch closer and closer to that Pokemon threshold as they were making the game, and then as they were updating the game as well.
Mm-hmm.
So they were a little bit playing a game of chicken with Nintendo, because when that game came out, Nintendo did not have a problem. Like they're like, yeah, no, that looks great. And then I think as the game progressed, they were like
And
getting a little too close.
you could make
And
a lot of points that their character designs and their models are a little too close to Pokemon.
Sure.
But it's funny that that is not the place where Nintendo is taking them to court. It's specifically over the throwing a Pokeball thing.
I'm not a legal professional, so we would need someone like Chris, Star Wars lawyer, or Beth, Mara J. Skywalker, to weigh in on this. From what I have learned over the years, is that these corporations will do these absurd lawsuits and like patents just to keep other people from just like just don't even try, like don't even bother. It's like innovate in a different way, like find a different way to innovate, because like Apple did the rounded rectangle patent at one point. I don't think that even made it through, but it was like, stop. Like I think a lot of this comes to, they don't want to have these lawsuits. They don't want to spend time in the legal department and being like, well, we have to file a lawsuit because this Pokemon has 3 whiskers and theirs has 4 and it's too similar. They want to prevent these lawsuits from happening to begin with.
The reality is copyright law in America is just broken, like
it's
everything
horrible.
else.
It's horrible. But like when you are a company that is that large, you do not want to spend your time in court. And so you start to file ridiculous patents. Uh-oh.
What?
You went away.
Oh, I went away? Oh, wow. Am I still gone?
Are we still there? There you go.
Whoa, now what happened to your voice?
I don't know.
Oh, you're fine now. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, nothing changed over here. It was absolutely...
You just disappeared for a second. But no, it's I think that these, and I'm not saying that this is good, but I understand in a way of, it's just like these companies have so many other things they would rather be doing than spending their day in court. So let's get ahead of that. My
capitalist brain doesn't allow me to see it any other way.
Yeah. And it's like, I don't agree with all of Nintendo's practices. And it's one of those things of like, I know there's a little bit of privilege that comes with this. I'm like, I still have my Super Nintendo. I still have my Nintendo 64. I am not worried about emulation. I am not worried about ROMs. I'm not worried about what Nintendo is doing with their, like, if you pay us $10 a month, you can play these select Super Nintendo games on the Switch. Like, yeah, I could, or I could just play them on my Nintendo 64. Like, I'm not concerned with that. I understand that's not the reality for most people. I'm also the opinion, like, if you want to do an emulator, do an emulator. Like
you know, and this is something that, since we're just transitioning to really talking about Nintendo, I almost feel like it's a great time to bring up what you just said about emulation and ROMs, because Nintendo is a company that, in my opinion, really, I'm going to say benefits from
Mhm.
That idea of emulation, because there are, and this goes for every system, for every game ever created, there are games that are just lost in a lot of ways or
Yeah.
locked to an individual console, and emulation keeps those games alive. And
Yes.
I'm of the mindset that, like, because you're right, Nintendo is a particularly litigious company, especially regarding things like ROMs and stuff, because again, we're fighting with their IP at this point. But when they when they do that, I think they're hurting themselves, because what ROMs typically are doing is an emulation is bringing eyes to your product. It's bringing people to your product in a way that they might not have access to otherwise.
Yeah, I have done emulation in the past. I've had my fun with that. For me personally, not to speak for anyone else, it's never the same, in my opinion. Like it's never the same as hooking up that console, putting in the cartridge, putting in that disc, turning it on and playing the game with the original controller. Like, sure, have I beaten plenty of Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo games on emulators, or PS1 games, GameCube games on emulators? Yeah, I have, but it's not the same. And I know that there are limitations, like disc rot is a thing for like old like CD and DVD games where like that data is a sticker. I think people forget that. It's a sticker
Right?
on a piece of plastic, and like that sticker wears down, and like there's people who like have pulled out their like, you know, if they were storing their CDs in like a little, if you remember those like little zipper bags where you would like get the little binder,
Oh yeah.
and like holes are starting to develop in those discs and they can no longer be read. So like there is 100% a case to be made for preservation, because some of these things will stop working over time. Um, but um, I do love that original feeling of playing it, and I know that Nintendo has purchased emulators from developers to use on like their old Wii shop and now the Switch online, classics collection or whatever it is. They're emulated versions of those games. They're not the original games; they're the
Mm-hmm.
emulated versions. And then they have gone after people, and I'm like, yes, I think that it's one of those things of like, I think they should not go after emulation companies or emulation groups as much as they have. That being said, if we take a step back and look at the reality of the situation, not that we're promoting illegal activity in any way, shape, or form, there has never been a time since emulation has started where it was impossible to download an emulator and a ROM for whatever game you wanted and play it. They have certainly gone after certain companies who were trying to make money off of their emulators, which they shouldn't be doing. Making money off of their ROMs.
Mm-hmm.
Emulators are a different story. That software that they programmed. We're starting to see stuff with FPGAs now, which are really cool. I don't know if you ever like seen those, like the Mister and stuff like that, where it
Oh
is
yeah.
like they're recreating the hardware now, which is really cool. Um, but Nintendo knows they'll never eliminate elimination or emulation, but they there is a threshold that they don't feel comfortable with. And you may disagree with that threshold, and that's totally fine. But there is a point where they're like, this is no longer okay. And there's a point where they're willing to work with people and like, yeah, we want to use your emulator for the Switch 2,
If I
for
had it
whatever.
my way, I wish we had a dedicated system in place for video game archival work,
Mhm.
where we could have, like, make it like a subscription service or something. Make it a situation where you can have, host all the different systems, and have like emulations for each of the systems and games that were on those. I was just thinking the other day, I was making a list of games that I own or play from like the PS2, PS3 era that I simply, like you said, with Discrot and everything else, like I simply have no way to access those games because they're locked to a console. And it's
Yeah.
like, I think that, and it's not even a matter of like, I just want to play Xenosaga. It's a matter of that is a piece of art that a team of people brought to life, and it is simply gone without emulation. Like,
Yeah. The really tricky part, and like, because like people have said, like, what if emulation were part of a library? Like, you
mhm,
actually go with your library card, you go to the library and like, you can, however they want to do it, like they have a video game preservation archive done through the library. And it's like, okay, cool. Or like you said, with a subscription, okay, who are you paying? What are you paying for? Because if you want to play the Adams Family on Super Nintendo, Ocean no longer exists. No one works
exactly.
for Ocean anymore. So who gets the money? Does Nintendo solely profit off of that? You know, it,
You're right on the money with the library thing. I just want to chime in to say that
yeah,
I didn't think about that, but the library, like the Library of Congress at this point, the problem is that this is one of those moments where the fact that the average age in Washington is 157, so they're
yeah.
not like
They
up
don't care
with
about
this
video
stuff.
games.
But the Library of Congress very much should have some sort of dedicated video
Yep.
game archival system. And you're
It,
absolutely right, like especially since a lot of those like Nintendo Direct and stuff, those are just emulations of those old
yeah.
games. They're not,
Yeah.
so
I
like why can't we have that,
I think there's a way that you can basically say, like, through the federal government, when we have a federal government again, not to make this a political podcast, but like when things are back to normal, and the new generation of senators, representatives, all of that kind of come into play. I do think a cool solution would be you go to your public library, right? And you say, I'd like a library card, and it should be free depending on
Mhm.
where you
It
live.
is.
Like, yeah, my Seattle library, it was free.
Public libraries are all free.
Yeah. So most public libraries will have a website, and I think one of those benefits should be you can download an officially supported emulator for game. And here's the thing, I personally, and people may disagree, Super Mario World, there is no issue finding a way to pay to play that game. Like, you can get it on the Switch, you can get it on an eShop, you can find it in multiple different avenues besides just playing it on the Super Nintendo and just emulating it. If Nintendo wants to curate a list, and Sega and Sony and Atari want to curate lists and say, hey, we are fine releasing these games to the public, saying, hey, you know, get EA involved, Desert Strike, Jungle Strike. Do you have any, it's like, give them limitations. Do you
Mhm.
have a 3-year plan to get Desert Strike and this list of video games? Are you going to resell these games at any point within the next 3 years? If they say no, it's now available to the public to play for free. Because I totally understand the idea. Like, people want to continue to make money off of these games. Um, you
Well,
get into the people who made those games, either A, don't work there anymore, B, died of old age at this point.
and here's the thing, you can already, from most public libraries, you can already rent video games from libraries,
Mhm.
like current console video games. You can rent, I don't know if you can rent digital licenses, but I know
Mhm.
you can do physical stuff because you can rent movies, DVDs, books,
Yes.
and video games. So really, like, there's no reason why this couldn't be a thing other than the fact that the people who make this stuff simply haven't gotten there yet. And I'm
Yeah.
not gonna lie, you might have just given me a new crusade at a point when I kind of need one, because
Yeah.
this feels like a worthwhile cause.
I agree, because like preservation is important Video games will get lost. There's no getting around that. There's very rare random obscure games that, there are Power Glove games that will be lost to time. Like there are plenty of games that had gimmicks. Like at some point, Steel Battalion for the Xbox, the mech game with the giant controller, like that's going to be lost. Like those controllers will stop working at some point, and that game's going to be lost. It's going to happen. It really is. And like we have to be okay with that. Like that some games are not going to make it. In the same way that like some art doesn't make it.
Mhm.
Like there's paintings that are lost to time. There's books that are lost to time. Um, it's just a reality of life. But no, I agree. For the person who wants to play Excite Bike on the NES, and Nintendo has no intention of releasing that to the public to make money off of it, maybe it's just one of those things. Like I said, like if you have not given an accessible way to play that game within 6 years, it goes into public circulation through the public library, through the federal government.
I do want to point out, this is the last thing here. I just put her in the chat. So Pirate Princess Jess does game development, at least on the side, I think. I don't know if that's her whole thing. But she just developed and released a Secret Hitler-esque kind of game for the original NES. And it uses the light gun. So if I remember correctly, it's like there's a bunch of little like characters moving around the screen, and one of them is controlled by the other player using the controller, and you as the second player use the gun to shoot the character that you think is the person with the controller. And you have to figure out who it is. So that's why I said like Secret Hitler, where you're like figuring out who the spy is,
Oh, that's cool.
But it's a neat little game that she made for the NES in 2025. And it's just cool that it exists. And she's an awesome person. Go and follow her on all the socials and stuff. But especially if you like supporting that kind of stuff. Yeah, she's also on the D and Dorks actual play.
Nice. Yeah, like I love the fact that like you'll see it every once in a while. You'll see people that are still making Super Nintendo games. There's like a dedicated group of people that are still making Sega Dreamcast games to this day. So I love seeing stuff like that. Like people who are like developing games for very old consoles, and it's super cool to see that stuff.
I actually want to say real quick, again, neither of us are lawyers. That's where Chris and Beth come in. But the laws that we have in the United States, Sony and Nintendo are not American companies. Microsoft is, aren't they?
Yeah, they're based. They're based here in Seattle.
I was like, they're based there in Seattle, right? But actually, with Nintendo and Sony being Japanese companies, their copyright laws are a lot different than ours. And as far as I know, not nearly as convoluted. And like, it takes 100 years before the IP becomes public domain, like it is here. Like ours is really complicated. Our legal system is always really complicated.
Yeah. Again, I am not a lawyer, but I do believe that while that is true, Sony of America and Nintendo of America are technically separate companies.
Oh.
So like Sony of America has to follow American laws. Like they don't get to just say like, well, we made this in Japan, so it doesn't count. Like, no, you're
right. I just mean, I'm like, I don't know what effect that would have on these like emulation concepts or like these archival concepts, but it is something that we should keep in our mind as well. But speaking of Nintendo, the big news today was we had the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct this morning.
Did you watch it?
I did not.
I did.
Then
all of it.
Why don't you take the lead on this one?
So we are getting a Switch 2. They confirmed that they were working on the Switch 2 a couple months ago. There's been rumors for years about the Switch 2. Personally, I'm not crazy about the Switch 2. I wish they would have done something a little bit more bold in the way that they have been doing, essentially since like the GameCube. like the GameCube to the Wii. The Wii U was kind of the same, and then the Switch was a huge shakeup. Um, and then the Switch to like this feels not like a modern Nintendo move. That being said, the big changes from the Switch to the Switch 2. You have a bigger screen. You have two charging ports. There is a charging port on the bottom, which you'd obviously use in the dock. There's a charging port on top so that you can now play the games you want to play in portable mode with the kickstand up and then still charge the console. The Joy Cons are now fully magnetic instead of being attached by plastic latches. Um, they have a new C button, not like the C stick or the C buttons on the N64, but a C chat button. They have essentially their own Discord proprietary system so that you can chat and play games, stream your games, show your face on the new Switch camera sold separately. Which we'll see. Like I have I have opinions on stuff like that, but we'll kind of get through all of the nitty gritty facts first. They opened up with Mario Kart World, which is essentially Mario Kart meets Forza Horizon. It is like an open world Mario Kart game. So could be cool. Looks like lots of people racing at once now. It definitely looks like more than 12 people will be racing at once. Looks like the same characters are going to be there, same kart customization, all sorts of wacky courses and stuff like that. But the big thing is you can simply go off course, and like the Grand Prix circuit seems like it's one long track. That you go from point A to point B, and it just gets crazier and crazier. So that's cool. Um, they showed a couple of things, like we got to see stuff like Metroid Prime 4, which is exciting, but they only showed a little bit of it. They will be selling Switch 2 edition upgrades for a lot of the games. So something like Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, Mario Odyssey will be getting upgrades for the Switch 2. They will be visual slash frame rate, your typical, think of like PS4 to PS5 upgrade. Um, the system has 256 gigs of storage and can be upgraded with SD Express cards. So it is a new SD card format. They said specifically if you have a Nintendo Switch SD card that's not EX, works in your Switch, it will not work in the Switch 2.
Oh.
Kind of the same with like PS5's new storage system, Xbox Series X storage system. It's a similar thing to that. The Joy-Cons have a mouse feature, which is interesting. It's not that I think it's interesting that like they're doing it. It's just that I see this also as a potential to sell like a Nintendo Pro mouse. Because they showed like Civ 7 working with the Joy-Con mouse. They showed Prime 4 which is, if you have never played a Metroid Prime game, it is Super Metroid in first person. Great games. And they were showing that with the mouse control, so you have mouse control for a first person game. There's also like motion to it, so they showed like their standard mini game affair tech demo of like cool things you can do with it, which is neat. And as far as like games they showed, they had a huge third party showing. The biggest one is the FromSoft Duskbloods game, which we don't have confirmation that it's a Bloodborne sequel, but it certainly looks like it.
um,
Exclusive.
you just teleported into the future now. You
Oh, good.
disappeared for a second. You cut out completely. Audio.
Uh-oh.
You cut out on the stream. Baby, come back. But not, I could see you in Video Ninja. Just not.
Weird.
You just blipped out for a second. Sorry.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I'll just backtrack to kind of like the From Software announcement is
Yeah.
that FromSoft is releasing Duskbloods exclusively on the Switch too. So this is looks like a FromSoft Souls-like game. It looks like Bloodborne. We don't have confirmation that it's connected to Bloodborne. There are vampires in the game. So It seems like it is, but this is a weird one that they're doing as like a Switch 2 exclusive.
I have a quick
Um,
question
yeah,
regarding that game from an outsider's perspective on that game. Do do we think this is just the direction that FromSoft is looking now between like Elden Ring, Night Rain, and Duskbloods, like this multiplayer PvPvE style thing? Sorry, I just saw that and I was like,
I think so. I am not a FromSoft fanboy.
okay,
Ooh, I am goofing up your Alan.
how dare you?
I I liked Demon Souls. Did not like the Dark Souls trilogy. I liked Sekiro and Bloodborne. I should say I loved Bloodborne. And I did not really like Elden Ring. Um, I adore and worship Armored Core 6. I
I
think
know.
it's one of the best games in the past decade. It's such an incredible game. I think that Armored Core 6 is really important to this conversation because I think that, well, no, it didn't sell as well as Bloodborne. I don't think they were expecting it to sell as well as Bloodborne, or I'm sorry, Elden Ring. Um, the game did really well. Like the game had very positive press. It sold very well. It was a niche franchise that the last entry was Verdict Day on the PS3. Um, so I think that the FromSoft team, with the success of Armored Core 6, was like, we can have fun again with our games. And I think that's why Night Rain or whatever it's called, the Elden Ring like spin-off game. I think that Dusk Bloods kind of being this other style of game is just them trying to experiment more because they've made, I'm not trying to sound like I'm shitting on FromSoft. They have made the same game over and over again for the past 20 years now. Like I think Demon Souls was 2005, maybe 2006.
Jesus.
They've been making the same game with like variations and spins on it, right? But like they're called Souls likes for a reason, is because they're all kind of following that same format and formula. Um so I think they're
2009. But
okay,
still,
almost 20
Jesus.
years. I think they are trying to step out of that box. And I think that's what the new Elden Ring game is. I think that's what the Dusk Bloods is them trying to play around with that formula because Armored Core 6 obviously learned a lot from the Souls games. Like when you go back and play Armored Core, any of them, 1 through 5, they're all very different in their own way. But like the boss fights in 6 are Dark Souls bosses, but they control the same way in Armored Core you expect an Armored Core to control. So I think we're going to have that FromSoft DNA in every single game that they make, but they're trying to have fun with that formula. And I think that's good. I think that opens the door for more people who do not want to dedicate the time to get good at those games to experience the FromSoft universes. And I think that's great.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And like, sort of along the lines of what E-Ray said, I'm in for more Bloodborne vibes.
Oh yeah, Bloodborne
Still
was so good.
still holding out for that 60 frames per second upgraded remaster one day. It's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. At this point, I'll die before we get a remaster of Bloodborne.
I have it on PS4 and I've gone back to Bloodborne. That game still the game is
fine.
great.
It's fine.
You can play it.
There's no problem with it.
Yeah. But again, kind of going into the Nintendo third-party thing, that was obviously the big one. Elden Ring Tarnished Edition, which we can only assume includes Shadow of the Erd Tree, will also be on Switch 2. Cyberpunk 2077, Star Wars Outlaws, Final Fantasy VII. We're getting stuff like Bravely Default as like the remastered edition. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4 are coming as well. So lots of third-party support right out of the gate. As far as first party, and they showed us Hollow Knight Silksong for the first time. Like we got a very quick little, it's a real game. It exists. They're working on it. So that was really cool. I don't know if you played the original Hollow Knight. Very good game.
A little bit of it. I played some of it. I didn't play a lot of it. But I will say it blew my mind when people were telling me, of all games, the four that stuck out were Elden Ring, Cyberpunk, Outlaws, and Final Fantasy VII Remake, just because those are four games that, like, those are hard to play on PC sometimes. Those are big games. Like Cyberpunk, especially, like, that is a software intensive game. And it kind of blew my mind. I was like, coming from, Nintendo always being really behind in terms of their hardware and like what their hardware does compared to their competition, it was kind of crazy to see Nintendo announce 1080p on the screen, 120 frames per second, 4K from the dock, games like those, like, and honestly excites me, not just for those third party things. Oh, Chase disappeared again. There he is. um the audio version's gonna be more fun, but just like, I feel like the Switch 2 is going to make Nintendo a competitor in a way that they were not before.
Okay, here's the thing. Doom Eternal is on the Switch. It does not look the same as Doom Eternal on the PlayStation or PC. They are very much scaled back versions of those games. So I fully expect Elden Ring, Cyberpunk, Outlaws, all of them to have a visual downgrade to run on the Switch 2. The thing to keep in mind about Nintendo comparatively to Sony and Microsoft is they sell their consoles for a profit. They do not sell their consoles at a loss the way that Sony and Microsoft do. So Sony and Microsoft bank on online subscriptions to make up for the money they made, the money they didn't make in the revenue from the console sale. Whereas Nintendo sells just about every console they've ever made, I think since the GameCube, sells at a profit. Like anytime they sell to Best Buy, Amazon, GameStop, like they make money whenever they sell one. And that's why the technology seems like it's lagging behind. It's not. That's actually what it costs to run this type of graphics at this price point. Like that's what it costs. So if you want to break it down, and this is like the thing that I think a lot of people forget, is that if you want to pay the real money for a PlayStation 5, you would probably be paying not double, but probably 50% more than what you actually pay if they wanted to make a profit off of you from selling that PlayStation. And that's why it's always like people say, oh yeah, console is just less expensive. It's like, yeah, it's less expensive because they're not making a profit off the console. They're making a profit off the games and the subscriptions. And obviously it's going to be a more upgraded thing. One thing that concerns me is there is a fan in the dock, meaning they are not happy with the performance when it's docked. So we might see some broken consoles. I think year one, we may see what we got with the Switch OLED. We may see that. Like my guess is a little sooner than we got the Switch OLED. Because that's a very non-Nintendo move, in my opinion, is like this, like you put a fan in to make sure that the thing isn't breaking. And I don't think they would do that because like there was a fan on the Switch, but it was like a very low powered fan, like teeny tiny thing that just vented out air out the top of the actual device, not in the dock. But I think this comes to the huge elephant in the room with the Switch 2, and that's pricing. $449, which is in line with the PlayStation 5, which is not in line with what Nintendo has been doing.
Not to get political, but it is impossible not to when we discuss pricing. And that is the current state of the American economy and the tariffs that are being placed on foreign imports.
Yes.
That we've been told again and again that it was going to affect prices on all imported goods. Today is April 2nd, and I feel like I'm going to acknowledge at least a little bit. We had Trump, the White House had uh, an announcement today of tariffs across the board. Every single country that imports goods will now have tariffs applied to them, and retaliatory tariffs if there are already tariffs coming from the other country. It was a big thing. The American economy is going through it right now, but it affects things like video games, like PC parts, because these are things that are absolutely imported, and so, like, unfortunately, yeah, we are going to see a price increase that comes not just from the upgraded hardware, not just from the availability of things like third-party games that they're putting on the platform. We can't discount the impact of the current political climate and the current economic climate on the price of the Switch 2 and of the video games. Like, for example, Mario Kart World, they've already announced, is going to be $79.99, which is $10 higher than the average game for the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox and all those.
And the kicker to that's for the digital version. Physical games, they have said, at least we know that Mario Kart World will be $90 for a physical copy. Here's the thing about that.
Jagger. Sorry, my dog wants to say hi. One of them.
Hello, dog. Nintendo is not immune to failure. This is one of those things. This is very much a make it or break it for Nintendo for me. I'm gonna get a Switch 2. There are games that I really want to play on that console. I still have my Switch. I still love it. I still play it. The Switch 2 really intrigues me. Here's where I am very, very curious about and very hesitant on, because I've talked to a couple people today about this already. The kerfuffle that we talked about last week with Outlaws and its pricing at $70. That is a Star Wars game. That has a brand behind it. That has a huge franchise behind it. And you can make the argument that because it's Star Wars, they can ask that much. No problem. People have been talking that 2K may come out with GTA 5, like Rockstar will make GTA 6 $100. Like, that is a rumor that's been circulating for a while. Rockstar has not responded to this, but people are thinking, is Rockstar going to push for the $100 game? I think the way that consumers across the board view it is, when you have a game that costs $29.99, like you go on your PlayStation store, you go on your Steam store, whatever it may be, you see a game for $29.99 and it's new, you're assuming it's an indie title. Or it's like a really well-developed indie title. You get to 50, it's like that B tier console game. You get to 60 and 70, it's your AAA title. There is, like, I feel like the zeitgeist of video games is there is a tiering to this pricing system that's kind of always been there, but kind of not. It's even nebulous today, but I think that's just where the public perception is right now. I don't think the public is ready to ready to pay $90 for Donkey Kong. I don't think they're ready for that. What I think is going to happen is they are going to put these games out for $80 and $90 a piece. They're going to play around with things like Kirby Air Riders and be like, what if this was a $40 game? What if Mario Kart World is a $90 game? What if the new Zelda, like flagship Zelda, is a $90 game? What if the spin-off Zelda games were $50 games? I think they're going to play around with their pricing a lot, because one thing Nintendo does not like to do is they do not like to put their games on sale. Breath of the Wild is still $60 on the Nintendo eShop, I think.
Ooh, you
Yeah.
just reminded me another thing. Speaking of that, you will not be able to just plug and play Switch games on the Switch 2. There's clarify. I heard that like a lot of those you have to actually have upgrade keys for.
That I believe is you can play the game in its Switch form, just because it's the same form factor. Like the SD,
Mhm.
the Switch game, which is an SD card, goes in. They have not changed the form factor. So from my understanding, and we can probably get more clarification on this, is that you can play the game on the Switch too, but to get the frame rates and all of that, you will need to get the upgrade Switch 2 edition. I
It's
think what's going to happen is Nintendo by 2026 will roll out a Game Pass style subscription.
okay. For clarification, physical copies can be played on the Switch 2, digital copies cannot.
That makes
Digital copies will require you to purchase an upgraded copy to
it's,
play on the Switch
yeah,
2.
that makes sense. But yeah, I think we're going to get a Nintendo style Game Pass next year. I think if the games sell well at $90, like they don't notice a dip in their sales, you probably won't get that, because they announced that they're going to do the GameCubes are going to the GameCube games. A few GameCube games will be coming to your if you do your expansion pack subscription for Nintendo Online.
Listen, I
I
haven't
think
owned a Nintendo console in forever. Like I said, if they come out with a Game Pass for Nintendo, a PlayStation Plus for Nintendo, I'm
mhm,
on board. You've sold
yeah,
me. Because, like, especially for me, as the kind of gamer that I am, those subscription services make accessing games across all
yeah,
these different platforms so much more accessible for
yes,
me and the amount of games that I play.
yeah. I think it'll come down to is if they release Mario Kart World and it sells for $90, no problem. And they release this new Donkey Kong game for $90 and it sells, no problem. Keep in mind if they can if the new Donkey Kong game sells more than 2 million units at $90, they've passed the Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze numbers. That sold 2 million. And I was having a conversation. I was like, keep in mind, Grand Theft Auto 5 has sold 200 million units at this point. The last Donkey Kong game sold 2 million. Like I said, I don't believe that people are ready to pay $90 for Donkey Kong. And it's nothing against Donkey Kong. I'm not saying that any of his games are bad, or that this new game is going to suck. It's just I don't think that Donkey Kong is in the conversation as much as something like Grand Theft Auto is, something like Elden Ring, or something like a new FromSoft game in general. And the other thing, when we look at things like Elden Ring, Cyberpunk, uh, coming to the Switch 2, people are not going to be comfortable if there is a visual dip in how it looks on the Switch 2 versus the PlayStation 5. And Sony is going to continue to sell these games at $70 or put them on sale for $40. There is no way in hell you will convince people to spend $90 on a version of a game that doesn't look as good elsewhere. And they can get that console for the same price.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love when we have controversial opinions and possibly differing controversial opinions. My controversial opinion that I've said before is that I think we pay too little for video games as it is.
We do.
And that is
We really
not to
do.
say that I personally want to pay $90 for Donkey Kong. I don't. But I think that we suffer from an economic problem right now, and this isn't being political. In general, when you have something like the minimum wage that stagnates for 20 years, like, we live in a world where people do not have the disposable income that they once had 20 years ago.
Yes.
Video games have been increasing in price, as everything has, but the overall wealth of the average consumer has not increased. And what consumers are not ready to admit that video games are a luxury hobby.
Yeah,
They're
100%.
not they're not a hobby. No offense, they're not a hobby you can play if you're way under the poverty line. They're just not. At this point they are inaccessible, and they are a luxury hobby, and it sucks. I'm not saying it should be that way, but I'm saying it is. And if we want to continue to enjoy the quality of AAA games, we have to understand that the people making those are skilled artisans, and they're working often too many hours for too little money to create this product that they don't see anything on the back end of, and that we're getting for honestly a steal, partially because they're being underpaid.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it comes to there's an issue with bloated budgets in media across the board. Um, if you look at something like Concord, like the budget for that game was insane.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not even that it was a bad game. Like the people who played Concord when it came out said like, "Oh, yeah, it was fun." It's just like when you compare it to Overwatch, when you compare it to Marvel Rivals, when you compare it to any other hero shooter that was successful around that time, it just didn't stick out. And so all of that money is gone. And well, obviously something like Elden Ring can exist on its own. Cyberpunk can exist on its own. It doesn't need a player base to keep it alive. That's what a lot of people come back to, you know. And I know that a lot of these games have become free. You look at your Fortnites, which will be on Switch too. You know, you look at something like Destiny or Warframe. Like those are free games, and they make money off of microtransactions. So, kind of to piggyback off of what you said, but also to contrast it, is it's also never been cheaper to be a gamer. Like you can go out today to Best Buy or Target and get an Xbox Series S for like what, $250? You could probably go to GameStop and get one for 200, and you never have to pay for a video game. You can play Fortnite, you can play uh Destiny, you can play, I don't know if
Marvel Rivals,
yeah, yeah,
Brawlhalla, like all sorts
tons
of
of
stuff.
free
Yeah.
to play games where people who originally, like, I mean, if you go back, right? Let's think about the Xbox 360. That console was $400, I believe, at launch, and you had to pay for Xbox Live, which was $5 a month, and every game that was popular. So that's Halo 3, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, Gears of War, Madden, FIFA, $60 for every game, and you had to play online. There was no getting out of that. And there was no alternatives. Like your friends weren't playing Fortnite. Fortnite didn't exist. Um, like Counter-Strike 2, I think, is free now on PC, and runs off of a potato. so so it's just one of those things that, like, and also with Game Pass, EA's, thing, Ubisoft Plus, PlayStation Plus, you can pay less than a video game a month and have access to almost unlimited video games. Like the PlayStation Plus library and Game Pass libraries alone, there are more games than you can physically play in a month. Like just straight up. Um, so there is something to be said about like gaming being more affordable than ever. And I do have to think, like, this whole $90 game thing, is this something to appease investors and saying we are selling games at a huge profit and these are IPs that will sell? I'm gonna buy Mario Kart for $90. All right, eat shit. When people
Yeah.
come to my apartment and they want to play Mario Kart and they want to play the new Mario Kart, fuck yeah, I'm gonna have that game and I'm gonna have the physical version. I'm paying $90 for it. I personally have no problem forking over the cash that I can afford for these good projects. Like, I have no problem paying $70 for a game when I am pretty sure I'm going to like it. And I'm also, you know, mature enough to understand, like, if I don't like it, that's no one's fault but mine. Like, it didn't work for me. And I chose to pay for the game full price and not wait. That's
Mhm.
my decision. So if Mario Kart World is the stinkiest, poopiest Mario Kart of all time, and I pay $90 for it, shame on me. Right?
I think what we really need, and this is to go back to that Nintendo Game Pass kind of idea. I think we need more. The problem is this. So Game Pass is I think we need more companies to operate the way that Game Pass does. But the problem is Game Pass only operates the way it does for the people who don't know because it's Microsoft. And because
Yeah.
they have so much money. Because technically Game Pass operates at a loss financially. Like, and at least it's becoming less and less because there are less and less day one AAA titles coming to Game Pass, but it has consistently operated at less than cost, specifically because Microsoft can afford to do that in a way that Sony and Nintendo simply can't. They can
Yeah.
afford to eat the cost of $70 for Atomfall and just give you that game for your $15 subscription or whatever, but they're able to do that because they're Microsoft. But I think if we had a and this is where it's hard, because who decides what games are AAA? We were just talking about this on my stream earlier about what games are AAA, AA, indie. Who decides what falls into what category? But if we had those, like, yeah, flagship games are $100. You know, your flagship AAA titles, you get a couple of those a year, they're $100. Then there's another tier of games that come out that are $50 or so, and they have just less content. And then you have a wealth of games that are free to play and below that. Because I don't, that's my problem, is like, to use Atomfall as the comparison, I'll say it, I don't feel like Atomfall is a $70 game. If it is for you, awesome. But
Yeah.
I don't feel like that game gives you enough to justify paying $70 for it. However, I feel like a game like Assassin's Creed Shadows, theoretically, if I'd have paid $90 for it, I still would have felt like I got my money's worth
Yeah.
just on the amount of content and everything else in that game. But again, where do we draw that arbitrary line in the sand as to whose games deserve this cost and whose games don't?
Right. And it's one of those things that, like, video games are so unique in their pricing, and it's like you could definitely make parallels and stuff like that, and it's just like, you when you go to the movie theater, right? And you pay $15 to go see a movie, right? You're not guaranteed the movie's going to be good. That movie may be an hour and a half, that movie may be 3 hours. Like, to get a ticket to go see Dune and to go get a ticket to see, I don't know, Bridesmaids, which came out 20 years ago. Same
Oof.
ticket price. Um, like, okay, better example from last year. Long Legs, which was a semi-independent film produced by Neon, and Dune Part 2, which came out the same year. I paid the same price to see both movies. And I think both movies were good in their own ways. Dune 2 gave you a much longer film, very much bigger budget, bigger production than Long Legs. But I got to see both of those movies for the same price. I saw Terrifier 3, something that had a $2 million budget versus like the $200 million budget for Dune 2. Uh, Same price. It was $15. And then I paid for popcorn and a drink. So it came out
So
to
it came out to,
$100.
yeah, I was like, so $200.
So I got
yeah.
fucked by Pepsi. No, it's just one of those things that, like, even if you look at a car, like the car industry, is that, like, Yes, you can certainly look into like what are you getting for a Honda Civic versus a Toyota Corolla, right? What is the difference here? One's $35,000, one's $38,000. Where are you making up that $3,000, right? And then you get into stuff like, well, you can buy a BMW for $60,000, and then you can buy a Lamborghini for $100,000. And it's just like, yes, there's like tangible things that bring that price up. But with video games, it's just like, is Star Wars Outlaws worth $70 to you? Like for me, as a huge Star Wars fan and loved the concept of that game and had a blast playing it, I put like 30 hours into it when I was finally done. Like, yeah, I think that's worth it. Like for me, that as someone who like regularly only puts less than 10 hours into a game, like, yeah, Star Wars Outlaws for me, totally worth it. For someone else who likes Star Wars and maybe that's not their favorite thing about Star Wars, I totally get, like, yeah, they don't think it's worth $70. That's totally fair. I think Assassin's Creed Shadows is another good example of like they packed that game full of content, totally worth $70, probably worth $90. But I don't want that to take away from something like Hellblade, that clearly a passion project, not as much content, but has a lot of technology into it for the voice acting and motion capture and stuff like that. Like, I don't want studios who don't have the budget to make a Last of Us or a Legend of Zelda to be left out of the conversation of a premium product.
You just hit something that's near and dear to my heart. So, funny enough, Alan Wake 2, another game technologically a marvel, one of the top 10 prettiest games of this generation. Really technologically great. Sold 2 million copies before the physical copy. Technically at a loss. That game is still, as far as I know, even following the physical release, is at a loss. It did not turn a profit for Remedy.
Mhm.
And that's a good example. Like, that is, by almost every metric, a great game.
Yep.
Critics love it. People who've played it love it. But yeah, I mean, that's one of those where technologically, like alongside something like Hellblade, that game deserves the price tag. But it's not going to sell at that price tag.
Nope.
It's not, like, literally, Alan Wake 2 did not have a physical release so that they could sell it for $10 cheaper as a digital only game for almost a year, because they didn't think they were going to make back their profit or their sales, which they didn't. So, like, you're right in the sense that, and that's where I come in with this, like, I wish we had some sort of, like, I don't know, maybe like a budgetary difference or something, just because it is hard for niche artistic games to compete against GTA 6,
Right.
against Mario Kart World, when the price keeps going up. Because if Nintendo is selling games at $80 in June, like of this year, you can be damn sure GTA 6 is probably going to drop at least at $80.
Yeah.
There's no way, because if you're Rockstar, why would you sell your game for any less
I
than
think
that?
I think that what is going to happen is Sony and Microsoft are they're looking at what Nintendo has announced today, and they're going, okay, we are not adjusting our prices until we see the numbers. If Mario Kart World does well, if um I'm just gonna throw, if Duskbloods, which I can't remember if it's a release title or not, let's say it is. Whatever release titles they have for the Switch 2, and let's say they're all 80 slash $90, if those sales numbers are good, Sony and Microsoft will increase their prices. They're not gonna shortchange themselves. If they realize that Mario Kart Worlds sold jack squat, going to keep their prices just the same. Why would you pay $90 for the new Gears of War or the new Naughty Dog game? Why? You're not ready to pay for that. We have proof you're not ready to pay for that. Come over to Sony, come over to Microsoft. We have a similarly priced console and our games are $10 to $20 cheaper.
But as you've said in the past, Nintendo is really good at selling their stuff for profit.
Yeah.
Like, Nintendo understands that, yeah, you could play Astrobot, you can play any other platformer, but it's not Super Mario. You know what I mean? And they know that. And I wonder how much Nintendo is willing to just go, no, at least for a little while, to ride this idea that, no, we're Nintendo, we are a luxury company, and people, we deserve to charge that. And you could argue, like, is there a more iconic video game developer than Nintendo?
No, there's not.
Like,
I know people love to argue. It's so funny because like on TikTok, I've seen like, oh, who's the Mount Rushmore of video games? People like throw like From Software on there. People throw Atlas, and there's no shade to these companies. Like, it's Nintendo. It's Nintendo is who's on the video game Mount
right,
Rushmore.
Nintendo, like, that's the mountain that they carved it into, is
Yes.
Nintendo.
Like, if we were to like make an actual Mount Rushmore, it would probably be, people won't like it, Nintendo, Rockstar, Blizzard, EA.
Yeah. I mean, if you're just talking about the most influential and important video game studios of all time, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't, like, and that's the thing. I don't mind when people say, and this is where we get into those little nuances that people don't ever pick up on when we discuss Star Wars and everything. If you're talking about what's your Mount Rushmore of video game developers,
Sure. Mine's wildly different from that.
yeah. But if we're talking about the foundational figures of video games, yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. Like,
Yeah, I mean, Blizzard, like simply for World of Warcraft, I think like gets up there, and then like you may disagree with what they've done recently, but like Warcraft, Starcraft,
Diablo,
Overwatch, Diablo, like
yeah,
the big hitters in their genre.
mhm.
Like, people can talk about Path of Exile and other games all they want. It's not Diablo. You can talk about strategy games all you want. It's not StarCraft. You can talk about MMOs all you want. World of Warcraft is still, after all this time, the biggest MMO out there.
And there's a reason, like, and you look at Rockstar, when you talk about open world games, literally they changed the game with Grand Theft Auto 3, and just to keep going from there. Like, has there ever been a game more anticipated than Grand Theft Auto 6 by the community at large? I mean, and again,
no, I don't think so.
It's up for debate. That's why I ask. But I'm like, it's pretty much a universally anticipated game.
Yeah, I do think that, like, especially if you look at the just discourse, and like, I mean, it's also a meme at this point. You know, like we got this before GTA 6. Like, sure, I think that there's other companies out there that, like, if you were to make a Mount Rushmore, but like the amount of people I've seen talking about it leaving Nintendo, like, even if you don't like Mario, you don't like Zelda, you don't like their business practices, it's Nintendo. Like, anyone who plays video games knows who Nintendo is.
Your grandma knows who Nintendo is.
Your grandma
what
thinks
I mean?
you play on a Nintendo every
your
day
grandma
when you're
still
on your
says, "Oh, get off the Nintendo." Like,
whether you're playing an Xbox, a PlayStation, or your PC, you're on the Nintendo.
mm-hmm. Like,
when you have your Steam Deck, that's your Game Boy. Doesn't matter
Yep.
what it is. If you're playing video games on your hand, it's the Game Boy.
You know, and
Speaking of that, kind of to segue, the one thing that I think people need to pay attention to when it comes to hardware specs, pricing, all of this, a lot of people are going to compare it to PlayStation 5 and Xbox. I think one of the biggest contenders will be the Steam Deck for the Switch 2.
mm,
Is if Valve releases, like, because they're about time to need a Steam Deck too, because like Monster Hunter Wilds doesn't run on the Steam Deck. It just doesn't. So they're about time to need a hardware refresh for the Steam Deck. So if they put out a Steam Deck 2 this year for $400, that could be a big contender, because like when the Steam Deck came out, like Nintendo Switch sales did dip a little bit. Not by a lot, but they did dip. So I think that's one of the things that they need to keep an eye on. And again, I think that time will tell with a lot of
well,
this stuff.
and that's my question when it comes to the Switch too, is do you think it what do you think the odds are that it's going to compete well against all of those things, especially in the current market? Like, if I were, I'll just say it, if I were a developer at Nintendo right now, I'd be so angry at the state of the world, just because, like, again, do we really think that in a perfect world this would have been $450? Like, or do you think that it
I
probably
think
would
they
have been
wanted to
four?
release it for 350 is probably what they wanted to do.
Yeah. And so, like, I mean, when it's dropping at $450 with games dropping at $80, do we think it's going to sell as well as it could? Or do you think it's going to suffer from that? Shit, why are you quiet again? What? And you disappeared again. What the fuck? Hang on. What is happening? Hang on. I OBS, it's OBS. I know that's what it is. Hang on. Okay. Apparently what scares us, you're right. Well, originally, that's what it was. What the fuck is happening? Hang on. Wait, there you are.
Am I
Speak.
alive?
You're
Am I
alive.
alive?
I
I'm
don't know
alive.
what the hell's going on today. It's going to
I
be
don't know.
especially fun for the audio version of this one.
Uh, to get us back on track, I think the success of the Switch 2 right now is at a 50-50 state. Um, I think we are going to learn a lot about the purchasing habits and ability of American consumers this year, because it comes out in June. Am I going to get it in June? Probably not, because I have like a wedding to go to in June and a bunch of other stuff going on. So I might wait closer towards the holidays to get a Switch 2. Um, Personally, there are games out there that I would not have an issue spending $90 for. No, like no issue at all. I've done it before with special editions. Um, is everyone else ready for that to happen? We will see. In the same way that Microsoft decided their games were going to be $60 for the Xbox 360, and in the same way that halfway through the life of the PlayStation 4, they decided games would go up to $70. Like if you remember, I don't know if you remember, like Breath of the Wild sold as a launch title for $60 on the Switch, and in the same console life cycle, they sold Tears of the Kingdom for 70. Um, so, and that game sold really well. Both games sold really, really well. So, I think I think that if video game companies are subsidizing the loss of people who could not afford a 70, 80, $90 base level game, with their subscriptions. Because the thing is, if you look at Assassin's Creed Shadows, all the marketing is 3 million players, not 3 million units sold, 3 million players, because it is on a subscription service and you can play that game for what is it, $17 a month? And for some people, they're just gonna subscribe for 1 month, play through Assassin's Creed that month, and hopefully remember to cancel their subscription. The way I did not remember to cancel my subscription when I finished Outlaws. uh, but that's the thing, is it's just like, is Nintendo going to push a subscription service, or are they just going to bank on, we think people will pay $100 for our games?
I think they have to. We have to get a real subscription service from them. And I think that's because so Mama P made a really good point in the chat earlier. Nintendo is and always has been the family first system. You like that's the system you buy when you've got small kids at home because it's got all the multiplayer games and the Mario Party and Mario Kart and all that stuff. And the more you take a game like Mario Kart World and you price that at $90, that is not for a family of four anymore.
Yeah.
Like it's simply not. But if you have a subscription service that's $15.99 a month and you get access to this whole backlog of Mario Karts and Mario Parties and single player titles, now what you're doing is you're ensuring that you have a player base like like me, who's gonna come and get your console just so I can replay Majora's Mask for the 147th time, but also might pick up one of those you release titles, might pick up Dusk Bloods when it drops in 2026 because I looked it up.
Okay.
Like who might pick it up for that? Who might how many times I've picked up games for like handhelds or something simply because I want to play it in bed and not at my computer or on my couch.
Yeah.
So you might be like, you know what? Star Wars Outlaws goes on sale on the Switch too. Maybe I fucking pick it up. You know what I mean?
Here's the thing that, and like we'll see, is that, before today, I was like, I should get a PlayStation 5 because I would really like to have a physical version of some of these games like Star Wars Outlaws, Jedi Survivor, Fallen Order, Armored Core 6. Like I would really like to have some of these games I have on PC. Like I'd love to have a physical version. And maybe the best way to do that is with the PS5. And then Switch 2 gets announced and we see all of this stuff. And if you look at the habits of every console manufacturer, not just Nintendo, the amount of re-released games they just slowly trickle out without any announcements, like you can get every single Resident Evil game on the Switch except for like the new stuff, like 1, 0, 4, 5, 6, and I think Code Veronica you can all get on the Switch now. Like there are so many options for like games that they don't get press. It's just like, yeah, just make a Switch version of it. And if the like visuals aren't like wildly worse, I know that the one instance, I think it was Mortal Kombat 11 or Mortal Kombat 1 was like noticeably really bad. Because like Skyrim worked really well, Doom worked really well. And like people like played those, like Witcher 3 played really well on Switch. So like I could see this becoming my third party. I would like a physical copy of this game system.
Yeah. And DePaul, so shout out to Jedi Master DePaul who's over in the TikTok chat. He mentioned that, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, Nintendo games were $60 to $70. Like, Nintendo kind of has always been, I kind of forgot because, again, wasn't really playing them, but he's right. Nintendo has always kind of been a premium.
Ocarina of Time was $70 when it came out.
Shit, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Fuck, is that how much we paid for that game? Damn.
Yeah. And you make up for inflation. Like a lot of these games Like today dollars would be 120, $150. Like we pay less for video games now than we ever have.
Yeah.
So here's what I think the reality of the situation will probably boil down to if they don't do a subscription. They are going to release a flagship title like Mario Kart World, and then we'll get Metroid Prime 4, we will get a Mario game, we will get a Zelda game. Those games will be $90. I think that they can get away with Smash Brothers, Mario Kart, Metroid, Zelda at $90. And they will continue to release things like the 2D Mario, like the new Super Mario games, the like Princess, like they had Hyrule Warriors 2 or whatever the thing is. I can see
Mhm.
that being a $60-$70 game. And say when Pokemon comes out, that'll be $90 for both
Yeah.
fucking games.
But imagine we get a world where like some of those big titles that maybe aren't those huge flagship titles come to the subscription service within a couple months of release.
Sure.
Like imagine we get Pokemon Z to A, 3 months after it releases
I
or
don't think they'll do
something.
day one. I don't think they'll do the same thing that Microsoft does. They
Again,
won't.
Microsoft
Yeah.
loses money doing
Yeah.
that. They only make it up because of the rest of the sales of their company. Microsoft does not make money on Game Pass. That's why we don't see day ones very often. Once in a blue moon, we will get a small title day one on PlayStation Plus, but that's why we never get AAA titles on that day one.
I would love to see the real numbers of Starfield. Like who bought it? Where did they buy it? Who was playing it? Where were they playing it? Like that game is truly, whether you like the game or not, it is an enigma because it was a game that I don't believe deserved the hate it got. It got all of the hate in the world. I don't think it's a perfect game, but people were constantly using like Steam charts to say that no one was playing the game when I guarantee you most people when they heard that game was coming to Game Pass day 1, they did not buy that game. They were going to Game Pass it. So I'm very curious as to where Nintendo is going to take this because I think they have a good opportunity to do a subscription service. So you can get Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, Switch 2 editions included in your subscription. Mario Kart World is included. Um, if they do Dust Bloods or whatever that game is, that's from Soft Game, like if that's a day one or, hey, play it. If you buy it, you play it 2 months early or a month early, and then it comes to streaming. And then it's like, yeah, I think people who want to get on top of that will probably get on top of it.
And to be fair, because I do want to acknowledge this, it Nintendo does have a service right now, the Nintendo Switch Direct or whatever.
It's for retro games.
Yeah, it's not as comprehensive as what we're suggesting, but like DePaul brought that up there too. Like they do have something. The framework for something exists. It needs a lot of work, in my opinion, to catch up to what we expect from subscription services from major companies.
Yeah, the way it works is you pay, I think it's $5 a month to get like online access. So if you want to play Splatoon, you want to play Mario Party online, anything like that, you pay same like how Xbox Live and PlayStation Plus work. You pay a base fee and you get online functionality for your Switch games. That also would come with it came with like Tetris 99 when it launched, and like a couple of other like little goofy games. And then they did, I believe it's called the expansion pack, or maybe that's what the new one is called. But they had something where if you paid an extra amount of money, you got NES games. And then they added Super Nintendo games. And I believe they upgraded the price and said, okay, now you can play N64 games. It is not the full library.
Mm-hmm.
It is curated lists.
Yes, and looking at it right now, so I'm on Nintendo's website, and you can see you're right. So for $20 a year, you get access to these versions of the NES, the SNES, the Game Boy, Nintendo Music, and special offers, and that's pretty much it. And then for $50 a year, you get access to that 64 catalog, Game Boy Advance, and a Sega Genesis, and a couple of other random services. Yeah, there's
Fucking
a Sega Genesis.
1994 me's head is
right. Like that's kind of. I didn't know there was a Sega Genesis.
I didn't know they had a Sega. The fact, you know, what's fucking insane.
Huh.
They're charging you more.
Yeah.
Play six. Like you want to play 16-bit games? You want to play Sega 16? Bitch, give me that extra money. Fuck you talking about?
What you talking about? I had that 30 or no, the 20, was it 24-bit or was it 32? I don't fucking remember. The middle-sized one. But you're right.
That's so fun. I see. I have not booted up my online pass in years. Like I when they announced Super Nintendo, I was like, oh good, it's time to beat Super Metroid again.
but yeah, it's very much one of those where, like, so to be fair, we have railed a lot about how Nintendo needs a competitive subscription service, and they do have one, like I said, that isn't that much, and it does give you, you know, access to those retro games. That's a cool tier.
Yes.
They need more if they want their, in my opinion, if they want their subscription service to rival their competitors.
Yes. 100%. But I think it does come down to, like, if Mario Kart World sells really well at $90, that gives them free reign to just say, yeah, we're gonna keep doing this, and people will pay for it. I think that Nintendo has had a pretty good cadence of these really big flagship games. Like when you think about Breath of the Wild, if we look at Breath of the Wild, Mario Odyssey, Tears of the Kingdom, Super Smash Brothers, Mario Kart 8, like those are not coming out every single year. They usually come out every other year. Maybe you'll get one every year, but you also are getting these little, I don't want to say side games, but these like smaller experiences, like the Link's Awakening remake, the new Super Mario stuff, some of the Kirby stuff, the Mario and Rabbids stuff, where these smaller experiences kind of hold people off and get that brand recognition going throughout the years. And if they keep that up, and like I said, those are the $90 games, and they continue with, yeah.
You know
like
what I'm thinking?
Mario Rabbids 3 is still going to be $50, guys.
The other thing that you just made me think of is, again, if they're smart about it, Nintendo can, the other thing that can make their subscription service more unique is the offering of games that are better on handheld, like games that you can take like with you on the go. Like even those, like think about like a lot of those indie titles, even something like Celeste, Cuphead, you know, Octopath Traveler, the Dragon Quest 3 remake, Dead Cells, like a lot of these indie titles and stuff that are fantastic for handhelds that might not be on other platforms, or are on other platforms but like aren't as, you know, savvy on them. Like they have a market being like, and I mean, come on, you're right, they set the fucking standard already from the Game Boy. Like lean into what makes you unique and sell the shit out of that, because that's what's gonna make them sell. That's what's gonna make them competitive. It's not about the Super Mario World. It's not about Tears of the Kingdom. Like those are great, and those flagship titles have their place and they make their money. but you have to lean into what makes you unique and what makes the Switch 2 worth having.
Sure. Yeah, and I think it's one thing, you brought up a bunch of these indie titles, and I think one of the things that people forget is that a lot of these indie titles are no longer these $5, $10 games. Like, if you look on the PC, like one game that I play a lot, Ready or Not, which is like a SWAT 4 successor. It isn't independent, it is like a self-published game. It is an indie first-person shooter. It has really good graphics, like very realistic graphics, very realistic gameplay, um, really high production value, self-published. It is by every definition an indie title. It's $50, like on Steam. It'll go on sale, but like there are a lot of games, like indie games, that are getting up there in price because the tools that people have now are way more advanced than they were in like the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 4 era. Like 30 to $50 isn't crazy for an indie title anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the case, like we're going to just see more and more games go up in price over time. Like we already
Well,
are.
and funny enough, the game I always point to, even though I've never beaten it, the game I always point to when we talk about the rise in indie games is Undertale.
Mhm.
Undertale was
Oh,
huge.
that's another one.
God,
Like chapter
blew
3 and
like
4 of Deltarune are coming exclusively to Switch.
yeah, and like but Undertale really proved what you could do with no budget. It
Mhm.
proved you didn't need to be a AAA developer to create something unique and engaging and fun. And now we have this huge boom of indie developers. And like part of me wants a flagship company, like a big company, to be the company that really pushes for indie game developers and is like a place for indie game developers to really kind of hone their craft. And I think
Mhm.
Nintendo, like the Switch 2, could be a great avenue for that because they finally have the power to run games that they couldn't run previously. And I think and Nintendo being the original big video game company, I think it'd be really cool if, and this is maybe speaking out of my ass about hypotheticals that'll never happen because we live in capitalist hell, but how cool would it be if Nintendo became the home of indie developers and pushing a lot of these indie handheld style games, or even these other games like the other 2D platformers, Prince of Persia, stuff like that. What if Nintendo rolled that into their like subscription services and stuff? Again, this is the same archival place where, or place where that discussion about video game archives comes in, where it's all speculative, but
Yeah.
it's just fun to imagine what Nintendo could do differently than everyone else.
One thing we haven't really talked about, and I think could play hugely into this, is they had with that little chat system, their little Discord thing that they've put in, is they are going. It seems like they're going really big on share play, where you only need one copy of the game for your friends to play. And I know from friends and family members and stuff like that, people who have kids, is it is very common for a singular household to have multiple switches. Um, and I don't think that's going to change much. I think initially, obviously, most people are going to have one, but like I know tons of people where, it's a couple living together, partner A has a Switch, partner B has a Switch, or you have a family of 3 kids and each kid has their own Switch. Maybe one has a Switch Lite or something like that. I think that if they make it really, really easy for people, especially in the same household, to play, Mario Party, Mario Kart, um, whatever multiplayer games they have coming out, and be like, hey, you just pay $90 and then you and all of your friends play it as much as you want. And it's like if you have a household of 3 to 4 Switches and you only pay for one copy of Mario Kart, that's not a terrible deal if you're looking at a family situation. If they make it so like, however they want to do it, it's like you give access to a Switch to play this game as long as it's on the same Wi-Fi or something like that. That can be a big deal. And they seemed like they really wanted to put a big focus on like share play during that presentation. So maybe that's kind of how they're viewing some of this. Obviously, it doesn't work for like me and you, where it's just like we're gonna have to buy it all on our own. But also, I think it does open the door of like, oh yeah, my friend has Mario Kart. Let's just all play Mario Kart together.
You know, that's one thing that like I wasn't aware of. Oh, who is the hang on, I want to actually shout them out because um they do good work. What's their name? It's not just EA. Who's the company that made Split Fiction and stuff?
Oh
Hazelight. Hazelight.
yeah,
So Hazelight does that where all of their games come with a friend's pass. So it
yes,
takes two A Way Out, Split Fiction. One person owns that copy. You can play that game with anybody. And
yes,
they, as long as they have the friend pass, you can play it with anybody on any platform. And I think that is the future for multiplayer games, and it absolutely should be. I don't think you should all have to pay $90 to buy Mario Kart World, or even if what you do is have a like maybe because Mario Kart World looks like it's going to be this big open world Mario
yeah,
Kart game. Maybe you don't have access to all of the features in the
sure.
shared version, but you should be able to just share play that game with your friends and just do regular old Mario Kart shenanigans.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, I'd be interested to see how that, because I know that like the Switch had issues when people were trying to share switches and save files. Like if like you had one Switch in the household, like I know that especially early on there was lots of like real fuckery going on to make all that stuff work. And like I get it, it's not like the main focus of the system, but like I know that it affected a lot of people. So yeah, I'm curious as to how that will play out. Um,
Well, and even like it's not just Nintendo to point this out. So I had an Xbox for a long time before I switched to PlayStation. My son has an Xbox, and they make it really difficult to share Xbox Live subscriptions. Like his so like it has to be this. It's a weird thing in order to have the same Xbox Live subscription on two different consoles was strange. I had to like make one the primary console and then another one I had to log. It's like it's dumb and incredibly difficult to do because they
yeah,
want you to purchase separate subscription services for
yeah,
everybody in the house. I do think that if anyone is going to institute something like, let's say you can have different profiles on the same Nintendo account on the same local network. Like, bam, if anybody's going to do it, Nintendo should be the people to do it because they're the family first video game
yeah,
company. Like I think it should be like that with all of them, where if you have the subscription, everyone on your local network can access that subscription, because that I don't feel like that's asking for too much. Then like you and I aren't necessarily sharing
yeah. I'm not
Mario
buying
Kart.
games for you, and you just
No,
freeload off me, and they lose
but
sales. Like I get that.
but
Yeah,
like your kids or your roommates or your spouse or whatever, like you shouldn't have to buy the same game multiple times to play it in the same house with other people.
yeah, yeah. We'll see. I think the whole Nintendo thing, like, they are a company that continues to surprise everyone. Um, they've had their missteps. They've had their consoles that didn't do well. Like, as much as people have good nostalgia for the GameCube, that was very unsuccessful for Nintendo. Like, they lost a lot of money with the GameCube, and luckily they gained it all back with the Wii. And then again, they made a huge fumble with the Wii U. I love the Wii U, by the way. I'm a strong Wii U defender. I have one still. I still play it. But like, I think that this is a company that, if we look at the history since the Nintendo 64, they've been like a TikTok company where it's just like they have their good moment and then their bad moment, and their good moment and the bad moment. And there's a very strong likelihood the Switch 2 is not going to do well. Like, I think that's something really, really to keep an eye on, is maybe the Switch 2 is a flop. And then they've got to really innovate next time around in the next, 10 years. So I hope that's not the case, but
I do think that the Switch 2's success, I I don't think it's going to sell as well as it would have 2 years ago, and I
no.
specifically am referring to the current state of the American economy. The American consumer is not where they were 2 years ago,
Nope.
and they're not going to be in that place in 2 years at the rate we're going. And again, I'm not trying to get political. I'm just stating the economic facts. We are
Yep.
in for a rough next 10 years
People
in the American economy.
people in general have less spending money right
Yeah.
now.
And I think that we're going to see, I don't think it's going to flop, but I definitely think it is going to
No.
underperform from expectations.
Yes, they will sell millions of units of the Switch 2. Mario Kart World will sell millions of copies. Um, like, there's no getting around that. Is Mario Kart World going to sell as well as Mario Kart 8? We will see. That those are huge shoes to fill. Like, I remember having a conversation with someone, and they're just not connected to like Nintendo at all. And like, they're like, yeah, but who plays Mario Kart? And I'm like, are you fucking for real, dog? Like,
Every
it's
Nintendo
one
player.
it's one of the greatest. Like, Mario Kart 8 alone is one of the greatest selling video games of all time. Like, it's in like the top 5. Uh and he's like, no. And I was like, No, really. Like, everyone who has a Switch has Mario Kart 8. Like, uh but yeah, like, I'm interested. Like I said, I'm gonna get one. Not gonna get one at launch just because June is way too busy financially to pick one up, but probably towards the holiday, I'll pick one up. I'll think about picking one up for Haley and trying to convince her to play more games with me, get her off of The Sims and Minecraft. Uh
Has she gotten into, what is it, Inzoi or whatever yet?
Enjoy.
Oh, this is the, have you not heard of the new Sims basically? This is it's in early access right now. The big thing about Inzoi, Inzoi, is that it uses like, apparently it uses generative AI, but like, which already makes me but I don't know the extent to which they use it or anything, but I know that there's some controversy there. But it's like got features where like you can import like dances from videos to be emotes for your, whatever they're called, for your not Sims. The graphics are very realistic. Like the little Inzois or whatever look a lot more realistic than Sims do, but
I
apparently it
hate
does
this.
a lot. I know I'm in the category of like, it borders on uncanny valley of like, it's too real to be like The Sims. Like, part of the charm of The Sims is that it's like Lemmings. You remember the Lemmings games?
Yes.
It's like those where you're like,
Sending lemmings off of a
these
cliff in the
aren't
game.
real people, you know what I mean? Like, that sim dying in the pool is fine. Like, it's not real.
Yeah.
But like
I
Inzoi, they look very real.
Yeah, this is
Okay,
I'm sure.
that's what it was. Real quick, I want to clarify. It's generative AI made from in-house models. So the only thing that they're using to generate use with the AI is art that is already in the database that the company has like made. So it's art
Okay.
made specifically for the game, and then AI populates like designs on characters' shirts using generated from their own database of art rather than from just the collective
I'm
existence. Also, shout out to the Jedi Smark over on the TikTok. What's up? I see you.
I'm going to assume that Haley knows about Enzoy because she does follow a lot of like Sims creators who have probably covered this. Uh but man, this is the first time I've heard of it. This is wild. Uh but no, like you know what Nintendo could do? They could just release Sims 4 on Switch 2. People have put thousands of dollars into the Sims
That
4.
would, honest to God, if you wanted to sell the Switch 2, be like, Sims 4 is coming exclusively to the Switch 2. It's done. We're cooked. Like,
Trillions of copies of
because you're right. People don't understand that, like,
Oh,
that is
Sims
like
is
the
the
most
biggest.
played game of all time. It's
It's
insane.
people who like discount the Sims. I'm like, oh, so you don't actually know about video games.
Right.
Like Sims is on a whole different level. And like video game sales and active players and all that. It is crazy. But yeah, I'll have to talk to Haley about Enzoy.
I just curious. Like, you brought up Sims, and that's what I thought of because I've just been seeing so much
Yeah,
on that lately.
I'm not as I have played all of the Sims games, and I don't dislike it. It's just not something that I like really gravitate towards. Like I will every once in a while get an itch to go into build mode and like build a house and decorate it, and then never touch it for like another 3 years. Uh, but Haley is like super into the Sims, like plan stuff out to build and all of this stuff. Like she is like hardcore into the Sims.
I
But
never played The Sims, but I'll tell you this, I am not afraid to talk about politics on here. I'm not afraid to talk about sports or religion. I won't talk about The Sims.
that's fair.
That's how dedicated that fan base is.
They are
I'm good.
ravenous. I have slowly tried to convince her that like she should jump into the deep end of video games and she should play Star Citizen with me. Like one of the most complicated PC games you could play, and because it is up her alley 100%. It is like in its own way a life sim in space, and like that's what she wants. Like she is constantly downloading packs like the Star Wars Sims pack to like have like these more science fictions futuristic second life. I was like, this is kind of what Star Citizen is aiming to do. And she's like, yeah, that's really nice. It looks cool. And I'm like, it's complicated, but it's what you want. So
Hmm.
I got to get you to play Star Citizen at one point.
I know. I'm overwhelmed almost by the idea of Star Citizen.
Terrible. It's a terrible game. I can't wait for you to play it.
Also, if she likes The Sims, you might have more luck getting her into something like Baldur's Gate 3. I feel like that's a good. I mean,
She's
what
not
is
a fantasy person.
what? Oh, come
No.
on. But it's Vampire Fucker the game. Come on now. No.
She does like Twilight. We both like Twilight.
See? No.
So it could work. Yeah.
Just start slowly sending her videos of Astarion. Like you'll get there. You'll get there. She'll be like, I don't like fantasy, but I heard you can fuck a bear, man. No. you goddamn
she
right.
She doesn't like that stuff.
I'm just
as well. She's like the sex in video games is like not her speed.
Oh, and she plays The Sims? No.
You do not have to woohoo in The Sims. It is not
Well, you don't
required.
have to woohoo in any game. But
No,
but
the
where's
woke agenda is forcing me to woohoo these trans implants.
That's the first part of woke. Woohoo.
Yeah. Yeah, I started up Baldur's Gate and they literally said I have to have gay sex to start the game.
You know what? That's like, I still laugh. People get mad about what was they say about in the non-canon mode of
Oh,
Assassin's
Shadows.
Creed Shadows, Yasuke can have a relationship with an assigned male at birth non-binary person, and all I have to say to that is call him Yasuke.
Anyways,
I,
they
oh
literally
shit!
forced it down your throat.
They somebody did.
Oh yeah, the final boss of Assassin's Creed is sex with a man.
Oh shit! All right. Well. Oh man. So I want to ask you as we transition toward wrapping this up.
Yeah.
One other big thing that dropped today. We're both big Star Wars fans. What is your thoughts on Tales of the Underworld?
I'm excited because both Tales of the Jedi and Tales of the Empire I really, really liked. I thought both were really good shorts. Um, I I have to imagine that this was about to get leaked, and they were like, "We have to put it out before Celebration." I have a feeling this was meant to be at Celebration and like revealed at
Which is
Celebration,
when?
like 3 weeks from now.
I was like, I know it's this month.
Yeah, like it's very soon. So like I have to assume that it was there was a risk of it being leaked and they just kind of uh like, just put the trailer out. I have a feeling they'll probably show an episode or two at Celebration is my guess. But I'm excited because while I'm not super attached to a lot of the Clone Wars characters, I think that these are two interesting characters to kind of explore a little bit more into. Um, because I think the story of Ahsoka and Dooku was very interesting that they told, and then the story of Morgan Elsbeth um, and oh gosh, what was her name? I can't even remember her name. The two
Oh,
in the Tales of the Empire.
Barasafi.
Barasafi. Just brain farted that one. Uh, I was like, it's not Quinlan Voss, it's not Asajj Ventress. Those are the new ones. Uh, but yeah, no, like the Barasafi story was incredible. The Morgan Elsbeth story was also really good. The General Grievous section that we got for Morgan Elsbeth was incredible. Um, but yeah, I'm excited to see where they take it because they brought Asajj back technically in the Bad Batch. Um,
Which so I have thoughts about both of these choices. The one is, will we get kind of the explanation? Will we see young Boba Fett maybe with Cad Bane? I'm talking about Cad Bane first. And will
yeah,
we get the like first time he told him, if that's not the quack to calling the Stifling slimy? Will we get that?
maybe.
Will we get Boba Fett's dent in the helmet? Like, we know that that scene was animated or pre-rendered for Clone Wars. Will we get that?
I don't think so because the way that if you look at both tales and you look at the Bad Batch, the way everything is done now is so radically different from the Clone Wars. Even if it's like that same style, the way they frame everything, the way they animate everything, like if you go, even if you look at like season 6 and parts of season 7 compared to the Bad Batch season 3, totally different. 100% different.
Well, and I guess I mean not necessarily that they're going to reuse that, but
Mhm.
will we get that as one of the stories about Cad Bane? Like, could we get that
It's
retold?
possible because I think that what we got in both Tales of the Empire and Tales of the Jedi were like you kind of got an idea of where each story was going, but they'd also take an interesting turn somewhere along the way. So I think it's possible, but I think it's more going to be a Cad Bane origin story, like how he became the bounty hunter he became known to be.
Mhm.
But I mean, you look at what happened with Tales of the Empire. Which you said you hadn't seen Tales of the Empire.
So yeah, I have not seen Tales of the Empire. I did watch Tales of the Jedi like 147 times because I love me some Count Dooku.
I Tales of the Empire takes some very interesting turns. Like it starts off going one direction for each character and goes in a completely different direction. So I think we will be pleasantly surprised with both stories.
I do want to ask, because this is something I don't want to waste a bunch of time on, but what do we think already with season 3 of the Bad Batch? We've already had Dark Disciple called into question a little bit. What do you think? Because I'm sorry, I'm gonna die on the hill that Dave Filoni just gave the middle finger to the Ahsoka novel with Tales of the Jedi. Like, people, we can argue it. People, like, I love my friends who are lore masters who will explain to you how these two can coexist, but it takes a little bit of circular reasoning to really make me believe that they coexist.
We've gotta sift through some straws to make it.
Yeah, like we have
right.
to accept some logical leaps to say, like,
Yes.
oh well, the same, she ended up on the same kind of planet in the same kind of situation in the same fight in the same, like, it's a little too parallel. But I do question how much of this, because it does look like she's got hair. It looks like it's taking place in the Imperial era.
Yeah.
So how much of this do we think at this point that Dark Disciple is just essentially not canon? Or do we think this is going to take place in a, like, well, after she was resurrected, Night Sister magic,
So what I know for a fact is this. When the Bad Batch season 3 trailer dropped and we got the first glimpse of Asajj, the number one question was, she is not alive. What's going on?
And Chase is gone again. I heard you for a second, even though you dropped out. And I was like, oh, well, clearly it's still going to stay there via audio. I don't know why you keep randomly dying. I can't figure it out. And you're back.
All right.
So weird.
Yeah. So, the thing with Asajj is when they showed that trailer for the Bad Batch and she was there, Star Wars .com came out and said, fans of Dark Disciple needn't worry. I think because we didn't get an explanation in the Bad Batch at all as to why she's back. I think this will explain why they would. I think it'd be very silly if they chose to do Tales of the Underworld and include her and not talk about it. Are people going to be happy with how it happens? So that's debatable. But
Night Sister magic go burr. Damn it! Why did it? What? Okay, you just came back. What happened now? Oh my god. I apologize for there, and you're back. What is happening?
I don't know. But yeah, we'll see. I think they're going to go into it, and I think they're going to touch on it and how she came back.
I will be excited to see when that first week of May after it drops for us to be able to discuss that, because I love Dark Disciple. That is like a top 3 or 4 novel. You're missing out. It's so good.
I'm almost done with Mask of Fear, which is incredible. And I've also been jumping into Rise and Fall of the Galactic Empire, which is, oh my god, it is like almost a dream book. Have you read it?
Yes, I've read both of those. I just finished Mask of Fear. So good. And yes, that is, so not to put us on another hour, the formation of the Empire, the transition from Republic to Empire is my, for lack of a better term, no pun intended, it's my Roman Empire when it comes to Star Wars. My favorite moment for years in a book was a moment in Catalyst when Krennic and Tarkin meet, and Krennic starts asking him, so what do I call you now? Is it Governor? Is it Grand Moff? And like they just have this question and they're like, honestly, I don't really know yet. And like I love that because funny enough, not to get too political, up until recently, we didn't really have any modern examples of how this kind of stuff happened. And that, I will say that to the people who have not read Mask of Fear yet, I will caution, and
it's a stressful book.
It is a stressful book, especially right now.
Yes.
Because a lot of what you see happening in the real world is paralleled in this book for a very specific reason. And so it's both a trigger warning and a sales point that like it's so good, but it is so stressful. That is a great word.
Yeah. But yeah, that is great. I'll get to Dark Disciple. But no, that, and then kind of paralleling that with Rise and Fall of the Galactic Empire, which is the history book, which like canonizes so much stuff. It's crazy. And the fact that it's like this was written on Exegol. It is like it's not a story, it's a history book written on Exegol. Like it's crazy.
Which also, by the way, if you don't know, for the people who may not be familiar, it is specifically titled that also because of a very famous the Rise and Fall of the Third Reich is a very famous historical book. So like the Rise and Fall of the Galactic Empire is called such and structured such for the same reason. And
yeah, it doesn't follow a character. It is just the retelling of everything that happened, how it happened, why it happened.
Mm-hmm. And it's so good. It reminds me, it occupies a similar space within Star Wars to what Fire and Blood occupies within the Ice and Fire, A Song of Ice and Fire franchise. Although a little bit more, a little bit less sensationalized, because Fire and Blood has a narrator who is telling these events with a political agenda. But in terms of having a book that you can go to and say, okay, in this time this happened, this led to this,
begging to be annotated.
Yes.
Like, but yeah, super good. Came out last year. Mask of Fear is the newest Star Wars book, and I've got about 150 pages left in that book. And
E-Ray, and to anyone else, you can absolutely read Mask of Fear with no knowledge of anything but the movies. It doesn't specifically connect to any book, or any, like, it not specifically connected to anything other than the films. It also does a great job of reintroducing and incorporating aspects of Revenge of the Sith that were left on the cutting room floor and weaving them back into the canon narrative.
Yeah, there's also tons of, like, if you have been paying attention to Star Wars books and stuff like that, there's tons of Easter eggs in there for you.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, I feel like we covered like everything Nintendo today.
Yeah.
We covered a nice little bit of Star Wars there at the end. I will give you an opportunity to kind of any final thoughts that you have about Nintendo, about the future of video gaming, about Star Wars, whatever you want to touch on, and let people know where to find you.
Yeah. For Nintendo, I think it's very much a wait and see type situation. I plan on waiting and seeing how everything is going. I think there's potential for things to change. Nothing has shaken my view on this is the best time in history to play video games. Like the games we're getting today versus the games we were getting 5 years ago, like, are just on a whole different level. So I'm excited to see where the Switch 2 goes. I'm excited to see where video games in general go. I'll get one and I'll have fun with it, I'm sure. But yeah, that's all I got left on that. You can find me mostly on TikTok at Forward Into the Black. I do have a YouTube and a Twitch channel. I also have a Blue Sky, Forward Into the Black. So follow me wherever you want. And then you can find me here every Wednesday and also every Thursday over on YouTube at the Podwans podcast, where we talk about all the Star Wars things. We'll be going over all the stuff tomorrow again. So yeah,
that'll be a can't miss episode of
Yeah.
Podwans tomorrow, especially with Tales of the Underworld coming on.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again, as always, for joining me. You don't have to. I want to remind everyone that, like, while Chase is the impetus for getting this podcast off the ground, he does not have to be here. And I am so incredibly gracious.
I do.
That I'm so incredibly happy to have you as a fellow podcaster. And
Well, thank you.
the more time I spend talking, this is my final thought. The more time I spend doing podcasts like this, the more I realize that this is the part I think I love more than anything, even more than streaming. I just like talking about shit that I love with people that I like. And hopefully going forward, I know that we've got a new guest coming up on the 16th. And from there, hopefully we'll be able to start branching out and grabbing more guests and having more people that we love. But I really do want to say thank you, Chase, for joining me on this adventure.
Of course.
And to everything we talked about, I'm excited that the Switch 2 exists. It really does feel like it's time for the Switch to have something that will hold up and compare to its competitors. And I'm excited to see where they go in the future. And I'm going to go back and rewatch Tales of the Empire and prepare myself for Tales of the Underworld. As for next week, I'll just give you a heads up, unless something crazy goes... unless something crazy goes on. I'm sorry. Next week, on Sunday, not this coming Sunday, but the following, is the premiere of The Last of Us Season 2 on HBO. And as such, next week, we will be discussing The Last of Us and The Last of Us Part 2. And if you want to talk about a can't miss episode, that's going to be the one, because I guarantee you, Chase here has some very strong opinions, and so do I, about The Last of Us Part 2. And I'm really excited to have that discussion with someone that I know I can have that discussion with, and I don't have to be concerned about where those arguments are coming from.
We will definitely have to talk about The Last of Us. I need to watch the show. I've only played the games.
Well, that's your homework for the next week. No,
I gotta pirate
Last of Us. You know what? All right. Well, I'm gonna pass you some information, and that but no, definitely if you can't have the opportunity.
Yeah, I might go through it because it's season 2 is coming up, and I'm very excited to hear about season 2, or even just watch it myself, because a lot of my issues with Last of Us Part 2, and I will say right up, I think The Last of Us Part 2 is a very well-made video game, very high production value. I understand why people like it. I have personally a lot of issues with that game. And I think one of the issues they have already solved. They're breaking it up into 2 seasons.
Yeah.
Like they're not doing the whole thing in one season, because one of my biggest issues with that game, and we'll talk about it later, is that game doesn't fucking end.
And I will say this is my biggest takeaway of The Last of Us Part 2 when we discuss whether it's a trash garbage game, piece of shit, woke, blah, blah, blah. The fact of the matter is, the fact that it can inspire conversation like this grants it artistic merit. Whether you enjoy it, because here's the thing, not everyone loves Picasso, not everyone loves Van Gogh, not everyone loves Monet, but we consider these to be great art. And part of it is because you can look at it from different angles and enjoy different things, find different nuances. And that's why I want to discuss it, is because it is a game worth discussing.
Yeah, I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. So.
But that is your teaser for next week. And I will say for myself, I am AJ. I'm the Dork Knight 619 pretty much everywhere. So you can find me here on Twitch, where you already are, the YouTube at the Dork Place in both spots. You can find this episode of the podcast and the other two both on the YouTube, archived in video format, and on Spotify for the audio version. And everywhere else, TikTok, Blue Sky, Instagram, all those places, I am at Dork Knight 619. But thank you again to Chase. Thank you to everyone who chimed in, both watching on the TikTok and watching on the Twitch. I appreciate your support. We will see you back here again next week to talk about The Last of Us, and we will continue conversation and stuff in the Discord. If you've already joined the Discord, if not, the link's in the bio everywhere. We will continue probably hanging out in the Discord following this show. So thank you guys, and we need to come up with a catchy outro line. I haven't thought of one yet. You got anything that pops up off the dome?
See ya, suckers.
Get in, losers.
Get in, losers. We're going to Discord.
All right, everyone, take care. We'll see you next week.